Hello, everyone, and welcome. On behalf of the International Society for Quality of Life Studies, thank you for joining our webinar today, An Encyclopedia for the Digital Age. We are so pleased to have our speakers. We'll start introducing them here. Hilke Brockmann is a sociology professor at Constructor University in Bremen. Her main research interests include subjective well-being, research, social inequality studies, and social data science. Roger Fernandez-Urbano is a doctor of political studies and social sciences of the European University Institute. His main areas of interest are subjective well-being, social inequalities, and social policy in the European context. Dr. Fernandez-Urbano and Dr. Brockmann, we're so pleased to have you. And with that, I will turn it over to you to present. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Jill, for the nice introduction. Thank you, everyone, for joining this webinar or meeting, as you like it, all over the globe. We are excited to introduce to you today our new Encyclopedia of Happiness, Quality of Life, and Subjective Wellbeing, and reflect a bit on the, navigate a bit. Could you go back, Roger? Okay, reflect a bit on the challenges that we faced, because it was all produced during the time of the pandemic. But it actually also made it possible to connect digitally in a new way. And hopefully this is also the birth of a new form of networking that will lead to exciting new research. Next slide, please. Okay, this is what we thought we could present to you today. First, the question, why an encyclopedia? Why happiness research at all? And from these answers that we provide you here with, we derived the outline of the encyclopedia with the specific authors, how we organized the book and the chapters. Then we conclude, and then we lead over to the Q&A session. Next slide, please. Okay, so why happiness research at all at these times? In these times of multiple crises, we are confronted with war in Europe, in Africa, in the Middle East. These days, we face climate change, corruption, increasing corruption, actually. We see also violence, not only between states, but between people, rising inequality between classes, ethnic groups, generations. And we see decline in the family respect and civility in these days. So many, many problems that need urgent research and insights. Why do we still think it is necessary, actually, to focus on happiness instead of directly targeting these crisis phenomena? And the reason is because there is still this urge in people to seek well-being and happiness amidst all these crises. And with this pursuit of well-being and happiness, we might find insights into contributing causes. Happiness could be a cause for the crisis. Just think of the intentions of American republics to make America great again. And this urge to make America great again is probably the urge to lead more happiness in America, which might cause then a crisis, what we see these days there, a polarization in the public sphere. The pursuit of well-being and happiness could also be a consequence of a crisis. When we think, for example, of migration, where people try to escape from the miseries of their home country and seek well-being and happiness in other places in the world. Or the pursuit of well-being and happiness that people drive could be the solution. Maybe if we think of new forms of labor, where people try to come up with a balance of life and work that leads to a more sustainable life. Next slide, please. What we see when we look into research is actually a tremendous, even exponential growth, if we see this over time. Roger produced that slide by looking into Google Books and he compiled their publications over time. I hope you could see this from the 1500s until today, and you could see that really with the turn of the millennium, there is this explosion of publications that have well-being as a topic addressed. And this is very often framed already an outgrow of the discontent with conventional measures of economic growth and a good life. This has been claimed as research that goes beyond GDP. Layard also claimed that there is a new science of happiness emerging that shifted the attention to the individual, or put the individual, the subjective well-being into the spotlight. And the claim has been made that this is a universal motif of people's life. Also, what probably adds to the growth of the subjective well-being research is that happiness is a very democratic measure, because people are very aware of their own happiness and could actually utter this in surveys, which means, we don't, as researchers, have to claim, like a lot of economists do, that people try to maximize utility, even though people would never claim that they are maximizing utility. But if you ask them directly about their subjective well-being, their happiness, they are able to use these vocabulary. And finally, what adds to, I think, the success story of this research is that it's a good predictor of future behavior. Next slide, please. So this explains or this justifies why we should continue doing happiness and well-being research, but this doesn't answer why a new encyclopedia. Does that still make sense? In these times of digital publishing, in the times of the internet, where new findings are persistently somehow submitted to a broad audience, is it still sensible to publish an encyclopedia? As we all know, that the Encyclopedia Britannica actually was extinguished after the emergence of a Wikipedia. So would a Wikipedia maybe not a better thing to pursue? Well, we thought, yes, we could still publish a book if the book that we're publishing, if the encyclopedia that we're publishing goes beyond the state of the art, if it's really adding something new to the already existing forms of encyclopedias and handbooks. And we thought what a new encyclopedia needs to do is actually to address also the current scientific crisis phenomenon, because the phenomena, the crises that we observe in the society actually also is mirrored in the scientific field. We have learned during the pandemic, for example, that scientific reports are really challenged, that recommendations are not believed. We have a trust problem with scientific findings. Also when it comes to climate change, for example. And this was actually derived also from some prediction problems that we have, right? It was very difficult for a lot of economists to predict the financial crisis or a replication crisis that really shook psychology when people learned that the experiments can be very hardly replicated. We also witness an inequality crisis within science when we see how research funds are distributed and how represented universities are in the general scientific discussions. And finally, we also probably witness an innovation crisis. Next slide, please. This is a very interesting paper that I would like to point to before we then dive into our encyclopedia. It's a paper by Park, Larry, and Funk, published in Nature in 2023. And what these graphs show is the decline in disruptiveness and innovativeness of papers across all disciplines and patents. And against this background, actually, we thought, okay, we need to come up with a new approach to produce an encyclopedia. And if you turn over to the next slide, Roger.
Yes,
then
thank
I
you,
can hand
Hilke.
over to you.
Yes, thank you very much, Hilke, for your excellent presentation. And exactly, and that's why we wanted to make a different encyclopedia from the traditional encyclopedias that you have seen until now. And we also wanted that our authors not only reflect on the nowadays state of the art of their respective area with happiness, but that they also focus on the future and emerging topics. And that's why we wanted to include authors from not only from the Western world, but also that they maybe are non-native English speakers from different stages of their academic career, in order that we can also give a room for them to maybe see new and original perspective. And then a point that we would like later to maybe discuss with you in the Q&A session, that is the possibility to maybe transform this project into a Wikipedia project. But maybe later we can discuss about this point. Next, yeah. So, but to give you a bit of more information about the actual facts of our encyclopedia, we have over 100 authors, 62 chapters, which more or less give us around 600 pages. We have authors from all corners of the world and ages, and we have different highlights. For instance, one open access contribution from the editors of the UN World Happiness Report, with Professor Halliwell and his colleagues. And we think, for instance, that this is a very interesting chapter because it reflects not only about what they do with the World Happiness Report, but how this idea emerged and what is the future, what the authors think about, what are the future steps in the coming years and decades. And this is, for instance, some kind of information that we didn't find in any other place, and that we are sure that the readers will like it a lot. Also, we have a very touching personal quality of life journey from Professor Alex Michalos that is here with us today, where he describes the course of his life from a quality of life perspective. And he also wants to make a reflection on diversity. And maybe later also, he can also maybe say something about it. And we introduced the encyclopedia with a fantastic preface from Professor Caro Graham, that she was very generous to also write the preface from us, and we really think that it's a perfect introduction to the different chapters of the encyclopedia. And here you can see all the different authors that if you have an easy observation, you will see that they are from different nationalities, but to try to bring a bit of descriptive statistics to all these different authors, let me tell you that we try always to preserve a balance in terms of gender and age. And our main objective was to include as many non-Western authors as possible, because normally in the last books that were similar to this encyclopedia, most of the authors were from the Western world. So we really tried, and well, we could agree that we achieve it at some degree, and we are trying to maybe achieve it more in the future versions of the encyclopedia. But it's true that, well, we have authors from 54 different universities established in 42 different countries. So we think that, well, we achieve quite an interesting degree of diversity. And as I said before, each entry is divided in three main sections: past, present, and future. What is the past main evidence? What is the present state of the art? And under the opinion of each one of the authors, what do they think that are the future directions, questions, methods that when they are reflecting on their topic related with happiness, they think that we should take into account. Also, it's important to highlight that we have tried that the authors write between entries that are between 2,000 and 3,000 words long, excluding references, so are kind of short, medium entries. But also it's true that depending on the topic, a lot of authors, because actually we realize that many authors really like it a lot, they really enjoy it, writing these entries. They ask us for a bit more of a space, so we were also quite flexible because we understand that each topic might be very different from one another. So the main structure of the encyclopedia, it's on 6 sections, as you can see here. The first, we start with the foundational concepts and disciplinary perspective. Then we delve into the determinants and mechanisms of well-being. Also, we have a section on the well-being across different populations, another one on data, methods, and measures in well-being research. Finally, one of the most interesting probably sections, that is emerging and trending topics. And finally, the resumes, that now you will see what it is. We have to say that in all these different sections, many of the entries also could go into the section number 5, emerging and trending topics. But still, we think that this was the best way to organize the encyclopedia. So if we look for in the first section, the foundational and disciplinary perspective, you will see that, for instance, there are entries on biology, on, well, Mark Fabiana insisted us on the necessity to write 2 chapters on the epistemology of well-being and the ethics of well-being, which are very good. Also, we talk about neuroscience, positive psychology, public policy. So as you can see, we have a lot of diversity in the topics. When it comes to the second section, we start with a chapter by Alan Piper, Age and Happiness, that I think that is excellent. Also, Tim Lomas wrote a very nice chapter on balance and harmony. We also have chapters on consumerism, or cultural differences. Also on environmental science. Ada Farren-Carbonell also wrote a very interesting chapter on income and relative concerns. Anthony, that today is here with us, organizing also this event, also wrote an excellent chapter on job insecurity and subjective well-being. Remy, Alberto, and Christian about Moy and happiness. Lucia Macchia on physical pain and well-being. So as you can see, we touch a lot of different topics that we thought that was important and from an original perspective. Sense of touch, singlehood. Francesco Sarracino and Julia Slater also wrote an interesting chapter on social capital and subjective well-being, social cohesion, mobility, status anxiety, or, for instance, the chapter of Ingrid Schoon on the study of risk and resilience. When we delve into the third section of our encyclopedia, we had also here very interesting chapters. I am sure that you will love it to read it. For instance, the first one on cities and happiness. What is the relationship between the design of the cities and the relationship between living in urban and rural areas? This is an excellent chapter by Professor Moratidis. Also, geography and happiness. We thought that this is also one of a very good entry by Thanasis and Albertos. Luciano also wrote a very interesting chapter about happiness and indigenous peoples in Brazil and also in other areas, but mainly focused on Brazil. Professor Mariano Rojas on the case of the Latin American happiness, which also is very interesting. Martin Hendricks on happiness and migration. Also, this interesting chapter of Laura Kudma and Jane Carter on romantic relationships in underrepresented groups, which makes us reflect in a way that I never think about that before. Sam Muchebri, for instance, that he was one of the founders of the Bhutan Happiness Index, and he explains in this chapter how he created all these index with his colleagues. And another excellent chapter of Nevena Kulik and Markus Lanninen on the subjective well-being of children, and also, for instance, the open access contribution of the authors of the World Happiness Report. Also, when it comes to data measurement, we have an excellent chapter by Filomena Magin on the assessment of reliability of measures. Also, an excellent chapter on big data and happiness with Stephanie and Talita, that, by the way, we invite them in the last ISQOLS conference in Rotterdam to precisely present with us the encyclopedia with this chapter, because we thought that is indeed very good and relevant. Also chapters on how to measure happiness from a public policy point of view. For instance, the chapter of Yoshi on Japan's happiness index, or how the OECD guidelines on measuring subjective well-being, how were created, what is the present state, what are the future steps, with Connell Smith, Carrie Exton, and Jessica Mahoney, or also an excellent chapter of Kelsey O'Connor on measuring social progress. We also have other ones like the Well-Be approach, wrote by Raul and Paul, or also a very nice chapter of Professor Van Hoven on the World Database of Happiness. Then maybe we go to what is, we think, one of the most interesting parts of the encyclopedia, that is the emerging and trending topics. For instance, here we talk about different topics that until now there was no research on them, and we try also to put it in the encyclopedia, to include it in the encyclopedia, because we think that can increase the debate on quality of life and well-being in many other dimensions. For instance, animal happiness, automation, brain stimulation, cold comfort, eco-anxiety, spatial inequality. This is also a very nice chapter of Maria Cotofan. Meritocracy, productivity, spirituality, war and happiness. This was also a very interesting chapter by Professor Obrizan and Professor Koop, that they also had links with the University of Kiev in Ukraine. So all these chapters, we think that show us that the science of well-being is increasing, that there are every year new topics that until now were not researched with happiness. Also, for instance, this excellent chapter of Professor Claudia Senik, where she reflects on what is the main evidence on the relationship between working from home or full-time in the office and happiness. And we also think that the readers are going to learn a lot from this. And finally, the last two chapters. One is written by ChatGPT, that is the epilogue, which we can also talk about that later. And the other one, as I explained before, is the personal story of Professor Mikalos, that also is with us today. So in conclusion, we think that we are very satisfied with the end result. It has been a great collective effort. We also think that nowadays publishing an encyclopedia needs a bit more of disruption and takes more of thinking outside the box. That's why we include not only the future section in each of the chapters, but to also make an emphasis on diversity of authors and in trying to include different kind of trending topics. And with that, we also hope to reach many readers within and outside academia. And we are sure that Edgar will do a wonderful job, and also allow us to have maybe more open access contributions when the book is going to be published this next June. So thank you very, very much for this introduction of our encyclopedia. And if we want, we can already go to the Q&A session, where we prepare maybe some points of discussions that we can think that can be positive for this webinar. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Roger and Hilke, for this very interesting presentation. Well, I'm going to be in charge of the Q&A, and we have about half an hour. So please, in the audience, if you have a question, feel free to raise your virtual hand, or maybe to write your question in the chat. Parviz is going to be my partner in crime for this Q&A. So Parviz, if there is something I'm missing, please let me know. And so I'm gonna start, actually, if you don't mind. Well, let me first say that I have some insider information, because I've been aware of this encyclopedia for quite a bit now, maybe a year or two, when you contact me for the first time about it, Roger. And
Yes.
I mean, I'm so thrilled to see how it grew, over time, seeing more and more contribution, more and more topic. I think it's a very exciting work. And you are too humble because, Hilke, you started by asking why do we really need an encyclopedia? Well, I actually think that we do need, like, we have a big need for an encyclopedia because we have papers getting published almost every day, on happiness, on well-being stuff. But who is able as of today to give some, global expertise about a topic? It's too difficult. Information is scattered everywhere. So I think today more than ever, we actually need an encyclopedia. We need researchers from different age, different region of the world, different topic, different angle, to bring a sort of, view on this is what we know about this topic, and this is what I think we should do. I think for me, it's an amazing effort. And I'm seeing your slide right now, Roger, about the idea of sort of encyclopedia, Wikipedia, some sort of things like this. And actually, I was thinking about it during your presentation. I was thinking, like, does it have to end at some point, this encyclopedia? Or could it just expand, every day? Authors could reach out to you and say, look, I've been working on this topic. You have no entry on this topic, and I would like to do it, and I think that would be extremely valuable for the community. You let's say I want to start working on, I don't know, on age and well-being. Then if in my mind I want to discover a new topic, then I could go to your encyclopedia and say, okay, let's read this as a sort of entry door. And that could be true for everything. So I would really love the encyclopedia to become this sort of totem, like it's the entry door when you want to start reading about a topic. I would love to see it, taking this space in the academic landscape, and I would see it rolling, being updated. That would be a lot of work on your side. So maybe you would need a team of this for you, but I would love to see that. So now that was my question. No, that was not a question. It was a comment, and to tell you how much I like this project. No, maybe just a couple of questions. So can you tell us more about this epilogue written by ChatGPT? Because I'm very curious about it. And maybe second point, we all know that our research is sort of biased towards Western countries, Western researchers. So I saw that you really made this effort to have non-Western researchers, but can you tell us more, just an idea of when you say non-Western, are we still talking developed countries, or do we have also researchers coming from developing countries? Can you tell us more about these non-Western authors, please?
Hilke, you want to answer on? Yeah.
I mean, we tried to have people from all four corners of the world, so to speak. That was really our intention. But we were also not successful in some respects. I mean, we really systematically researched. I contacted many people also in Africa and in Central Asia. For example, there was a colleague in Iran who worked on drugs. We don't have anything on drugs. So there are blind spots, and I thought it would be very interesting. I reached out to him and I didn't get a response. And I was actually persistent and reached out over and over again. But then, there are limits. And as you said, with this printed versions, there are always these deadlines at some point, and then you have to close it. If we could really make it, as you suggested, Anthony, a living project that persistently updates and invites people, that is shifted basically to the internet and becomes a wiki there, then we would be able to actually, of course, have a rolling incoming articles and findings and let those people in. I also tried to reach out a colleague in Nigeria and was also not successful. But we were actually trying to. There is still a bias, yes, but at least we were actually interested in this without giving up, however, also quality.
Exactly. Because all this process that we had also on the revisions, also it was not easy for us because we have to preserve some quality, and the whole thing, yeah, was more complicated than we thought. But yeah, I think that as we said also in the slides, we're very satisfied with the end result, and I am sure that readers will also see diversity, not only from the country perspective, but also in many other dimensions.
No, and there is so much you can do at some point if you reach out to people. If they don't come back to you, then I mean, you have done your part to some extent, you know. So thank you very much. Parviz, I saw that you're raising your hand, please.
Thank you, Anthony. Let me start off by congratulating Hilke and Roger for producing such a fantastic project. Excellent. I think that the very last slide invited some comments on possibly ways of taking this forward. I think a comment was made during the presentation of possibly transforming this into a wiki type project. I think that's fantastic. It also allows Anthony's idea of keeping this as a live project to work, because if you have that particular type of a digital representation of this encyclopedia, and if it's editable either by yourselves or as in the case of Wikipedia by the community, it keeps it alive. But the reason I raised my hand really, I wanted to make a suggestion which I think might be quite ambitious, and ambitious, but ambition isn't bad. But of course, if you come up with an ambitious project, it's likely to be very expensive to implement. So that's the kind of sticking point. And I'm really kind of trying to think outside of the box, and I'm, quite happy to be shot down. But why not? I think you said you have over 60 authors and over 100 papers. I wonder whether it would be feasible to ask some of these wonderful colleagues to participate in the production of some kind of a podcast whereby whereby each one of them or all of them, but that's going to be difficult, to talk, to speak maybe briefly, not the entirety of their 3,000 words, but to kind of come up with a summarization of their 3,000 or 2,000 word paper into a 5-minute or an 8-minute podcast. So they're speaking, maybe you are interviewing them or Hilke's interviewing them. So there's cameras, there's the two of you, talking about the work.
Totally. Actually, Parviz, as you can see, this is the second question that we ask, because we also thought that maybe we can promote it in social media with short interviews, in a podcast format, that we can also try to upload it in YouTube. And I totally agree that in terms of social media, this will be one of the best ways to really do divulgation and to really attract other readers that maybe are not necessarily from the academic sphere. So totally agree with you. The only question is how we do that, with which support.
Absolutely.
As well as the Wikipedia, because what we need is a platform. Maybe ISQOLS maybe we can do something. I don't know. I am thinking also now. I am brainstorming with you, but it's true that the idea should be go in this direction, I think. So maybe other participants also have other points of views or wanted to add something else.
Well done. Good. Great. I'm happy to hear that it wasn't ruled out. Yes, that's great.
No, I think actually the podcast is a brilliant idea, because if you reach out to the authors, to say, can you shoot yourself a sort of video of 5 minutes of yourself talking or blah, blah. I think everybody's going to say no. While if you say this is for a podcast and then you edit, afterwards you do a podcast of half an hour and you take a small bit of 1 minute, 2 minutes, this you can communicate about it on social media while still having the full podcast. Maybe, also for the authors, maybe not to clarify things because the entries need to be clear, but maybe to give more, so some updates, literature changed.
Yeah.
Maybe there are some, some connections that were not made in the entry. I think the podcast, Parviz, is actually a brilliant.
And even, and Anthony, and even the readers that maybe want to reflect more or know more about this entry, maybe then can go to the podcast and then see maybe the short interview and the full interview, which also will be, wow, it's amazing. Yeah.
And we could have actually a series
Yes.
referring to the chapters, and then we bring these people from these different chapters together and, add them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It needs some time and some money. But I think that's a very attractive idea.
It's
Anthony,
resource heavy.
Pardon me?
Sorry, I just said it's resource heavy, but you're quite right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, but that should be solved, of course. But I also forgot, Anthony, to answer to your question on ChatGPT. So actually, again, we were very much driven by the digitalization of publishing, and particularly also with the impression of the pandemic, where we then actually met 2 times for Zoom meetings so that we could connect at least in these times of isolation. And we thought that actually, who has the last word? What's the future of academic writing when we have artificial intelligence? And so what we did actually at the ISQOLS conference in Rotterdam, we did a little survey at the end of where we presented already the encyclopedia. We had a little survey, online survey, of course, and asked people who attended to fill out the survey, and then took the automated results that is produced by this survey company and inserted us into, or copied the results into ChatGPT and asked, please write an epilogue. What would you write? What's the outcome? And it was, I have to say, it was ChatGPT 3.5. 4 is much better, and 5 will probably solve all the problems that we have on the planet. But ChatGPT 3.5 did produce an epilogue, makes a lot of sense, but actually ignored the number of participants. So it took a lot of these results in percentages, but didn't convey that there were only 19 respondents. So that was something that we could then as humans contribute and say, we have to probably downweigh the conclusions that ChatGPT drew from these reports. But we thought actually it already hints to maybe another way of publishing when we have artificial support.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm also saying in the chat that I don't see a question in the chat for the moment, but I see that there is support for the idea of podcast and social media in general. So I think there is really something to do there. We have a question from Parviz. Yeah, Parviz, go for it, please.
Sorry, I don't want to take too much time. Thank you, Anthony. I don't have the slides in front of me right now, but what I did notice that whilst they were on the screen, there was a breakdown of, I think, the authors by gender and by age, as I recall, and there were basically 2 kind of pie charts. I mean, this is really a very, very small comment. I just noticed that the way the pie charts were split, they looked identical. And that's obviously that the male female is unless you take a very modern approach, that's a binary question. So that has to be as it is. But with the age structure, I noticed your cutoff point was 45. I mean, if you're going to make this presentation to another audience, it's a very small point. I would adjust that age threshold just so that the pie charts don't look identical. They look so identical that it looks as if it could have been a mistake, but I'm sure it's not.
No.
I know it's not a mistake, but to the unwary, it looks as if maybe there's something gone wrong with their labeling. So just for the purposes of a possible future presentation, set the age at say 35 or I don't know, 55 or something, because 45 coincidentally has resulted in the same identical split as the male
Yes.
female. Anyway, small
Totally.
comment.
Thank you very much for the suggestion. Yeah, totally agree.
No, not at all.
I received a question directly in the chat. Someone asked me just about the encyclopedia. Can you just clarify when and where we're going to be able to find the encyclopedia?
Why and where?
When and where?
When in June, so it will be in 1 month and a half, and it will be published by Edward Elgar, and probably it will be published online, but also it will be possible to also buy the book physically. We're also still discussing what will be the final price, because maybe physically it could be quite a huge book, around 600 pages. But online, I think it will be probably quite cheap. But yeah, we are going to try to make it as cheap as possible.
Well, I'm French, so I was not going to ask you the price, but that's actually a very, very important information to have. Okay, still don't see any question. Still nothing from the chat. Feel free to raise your hand or even to take on the mic if you have questions. Otherwise, again, I'm going to talk. And I mean, I'm very happy to talk, but I'm also happy to give some space to other participants. Well, I'm gonna keep rolling. That's completely fine. So, Roger, like thinking about this, future of the encyclopedia, this idea of potentially keeping it open or this kind of, project. Is it something that you think it's really achievable, or are we just dreaming? Is it something you would fancy yourself doing, like being like also Hilke, you're back. So something that you would envision yourself, sort of life project, to be the original founder of the encyclopedia and keeping. Is it something you would actually enjoy doing? Is it something you see?
I think that yes, but also again, I think this will be a collective effort, and that we need to find a democratic place, maybe, I don't know, an open access source where we know that in the next 20 years we can continue continue doing this in a way that can also guarantee quality, and that we are not going to have problems with it. And for that, I think that that's why we thought that also it could be interesting to present this project here, because maybe someone in the audience can give us ideas about where is maybe the best place to do that, or maybe within the ISQOLS platform they can allow us, I don't know, to have some space there, or the World Database of Happiness of Professor Ruth Benhoven. I don't know. I guess that we should search it, but I think that everyone in the community a priori will be interested for all the benefits that we have seen. So yeah, I mean, me and Hilke, I think that we will be in for that, but we need to see exactly how we do that. So if not now, but maybe after this webinar, any of the participants have some ideas about how we can do that, please write to us. That will be very, very pleased to do it, as well as the podcast, the podcast idea that we also think that we should do it, but also with a certain threshold of quality. So yeah.
But even I was thinking also for the launch of the book, for instance, what about organizing a small conference, with a selected set of people who, like for instance, Carol, she wrote the preface, like, I mean, having some sort of a selection of 10 to 20 researchers, and who knows, even making it a sort of yearly event where the encyclopedia being still live, like every year you say, okay, every year you can celebrate, say this year we have 100 more entries, and we're going to, invite to present like 10 of the people who contributed this year. That could also be something, at least for the launch of the book, and even making it a sort of tradition. That would be amazing, I think.
Yeah, we need to actually also talk then to the publisher. I mean, that is still, that's a very traditional setup still. And also the open access was, limited for us. And so I think we fight it for this, make this open. I think the publishing policies and the setup in academia are, I guess, not really keeping up with the possibilities. that we could have if we have this really on the internet, so that everybody has access. So here I think we have to quarrel between the proprietary data and open access data, and I think it should be open access.
And following up on this, we have a question from Carmelina Roig, who said, "Thank you for making it accessible for us junior researchers. Now comes the question for you guys. Which recommendations would you give for junior researchers to approach you or support you on next initiatives? Is there a way how people can be part or collaborate in any project on subjective well-being? So how can we reach out? Can we just send you an email?"
Of course. We'll be more than happy, especially given our focus that we really like to have young scholars and emerging and trending topics. This is exactly what we want. We want to have an encyclopedia that is different from the other ones, precisely because we have all this approach, and this, I think, that what makes this unique. So please contact us.
So I'm greeting Carmelina. She is a student of our master student studies in data science for society and business. And I think she is really into an emerging topic as well. And that is the impact that the digitalization has also on the well-being of people. And I think we have 1 or 2 chapters on this, but I think that's a growing field. So yes, yeah. Carmelina, please come by and join us.
And I guess like you're pretty open, right? If anybody reaches out with an idea, a topic, then you would obviously consider it. Like I can at least share my experience with Roger and Hilke. Like we talked together about which kind of contribution I could do, and Roger and Hilke like really helped me through the process. Like I said, I want to write something on job insecurity, and then we define together what could be the angle. Thinking about the past, thinking about the present, thinking about the future. So for junior researchers, I would say just reach out to them and they would really help you. Also, even like just the exercise on its own is interesting and important, because like for me, like writing on job insecurity and making this effort of writing an entry helped me giving a structure to my knowledge, because I knew most of the papers I wrote about, but I never made the effort to put them into a sort of story that would flow and that would make sense. So I think it's a great exercise, both for you as researcher and also for the community for the entry. So I can only recommend to reach out to Roger and Hilke to make it, even bigger.
Thank you, Anthony, for your words.
Parvis, go for it.
Yeah,
sorry.
Thank you very much. And actually, indeed, I would like to underline, I think we also in science face a problem with this exclusivity. There's a lot of publishing areas where the bottleneck is so thin and small, and it makes such a, you have to overcommit so much to get certain things published. And we tried indeed to lower also in that respect the hurdle. And if we have more space, then actually we could allow much more. I'm a co-editor of the Journal of Happiness Studies, and I have to say you have to reject many papers that are good quality, but just because you're overwhelmed. And the question really is this the way forward? Or do we then also add to that form of inequality that we see that, there is, a certain kind of, unevenness and biasness probably also in publications. I think we actually also should be more reflective on, what kind of scientific structures do we actually produce also for the coming generations that are, contributing to scientific progress, as we've seen, or not. And actually also these authors, Park and others in the Nature article, derive from this that perhaps the lack of innovativeness and disruption derives from the fact that we created structures that benefit already only established things, and you cite the same kind of sources, and you're not really encouraged to explore and be more open in combination. But that's maybe really something that we would need, particularly also to push forward this this concept of subjective well-being, quality of life, and happiness that is so democratic.
Okay, I think Anthony's lost his microphone, so I'm going to interject. But I wanted to speak anyway, whether Anthony was available or not. And Hilke, what I wanted to say, in fact, you just touched on it right now by mentioning your role as the co-editor of a journal. I was going to make a suggestion to you and Roger that it's a slow way of doing things, but it can still be quite effective in getting this work read quite widely and by lots of people, is to make some version of it, electronic or hard copies of it, available to journal editors, especially to the book review editors. I mean, I'm the editor of a journal myself, and if you wanted to, is entirely up to you. I'd be quite happy to ask my book review editor to find someone appropriate to write up a review of the encyclopedia. As I said, the process is very slow. From the day the book becomes available, it could take as much as a year before it's read and commented upon and enters into the queue and emerges as a book review. But it's better to have something slow than not have anything at all. So I'm just putting this out there. If you'd like me to help with the journal the name of the journal was in the email that I sent both of you earlier today. So, by all means, take a look, and if I can help, just let me know. Be quite happy.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yes.
Wonderful idea.
Anthony, are you back? I think
he's lost his microphone.
Right. Well,
I'm just going to interject here real quick,
Yeah.
Parvis, and also reiterate that ISQOLS is here to support you both, Roger and Hilke, in the promotion of this incredible project. And we'll talk more about how ISQOLS can support you and make sure that this is promoted to a wide audience. So the wheels are in motion already for me about the possible podcast and future discussions about it. So thank you so much. If there's any last questions, we're nearing our hour end. So are there any other questions or comments? I don't see anything in the chat. Parvis, did you have anything else to add?
I don't, but thank you for asking, Jill. I'm okay.
And Roger and Hilke, any other comments or things, last parting words for us?
Well, we just say that thank you very much for attending today this webinar, and also to ISQOLS for giving us also the opportunity to present all this work that we have been doing, I think, for the last 3 or 4 years, and that we are very happy that today we could share it with you, and that we can really think that with that we can reach many audiences within and outside academia, and that we are sure that readers are going to like it. So thank you very much for that.
Yeah, thank you very much. Also from my side, it was a we project, so an encyclopedia only lives from the contributions that other people also made. So thank you all to all the authors that were with us, and welcome to all the future authors. So I would love to make this a living project that persistently grows and indeed promotes the idea of subjective well-being, quality of life, and happiness.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone who participated today. I know we have some new names, new faces who have joined us maybe for the first time. And so we would like to invite you to explore ISQOLS further. We will be sending out a follow-up message with the recording soon. That's going to be posted up on our YouTube, our ISQOLS YouTube. So please make sure that you subscribe to that. Also, if you're not a member, if you'd like to try us out for a couple of months, we'll give you a free trial offer to become a member of ISQOLS. We hope you consider that. just another plug for the 2 conferences that are coming up. We have our annual conference in person in Malaysia in June, and then also our first regional conference in Africa, South Africa, coming up in October. So consider attending those events this year. With that said, we'll say thank you to our presenters, Dr. Roger Fernandez-Urbano and Dr. Hilke Brockmann. Thank you so much for your excellent work and time, and I will be in touch, certainly. We'll talk about how we can further promote this wonderful project. So thank you again.
Thank you.
And on behalf of ISQOLS, thank you to everyone. Have a great rest of the day or evening, wherever you're tuning in from.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye, everyone.